Again, this evening we have our junior ROTC candidates from Garfield High School to help us lead the pledge. Please stand for the pledge.
Freezing. Arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Forward. Arms. Pose. March. Colors. Halt. Freezing. Arms. Post colors. Ready. 2. Forward. Arms. Pose.
Big thank you again for those young ladies who've been giving up time this summer to come in, and to Mr. Greco for making sure that they get here. I believe they're usually promised McDonald's on their way home, so they work for pretty good wages there. The next portion of our agenda is our community and school reflections. Anyone want to get started on that? I think Bruce had some things he wanted to talk about. Go ahead, Tim.
Just a couple things over the last couple weeks. Last weekend before last, I guess, we were at the Kids Summit for Summit County at John S. Knight, and among other things, we were giving away books there, and we ran out of books, 1,700 books or something, in about a 2-hour time frame. It was a nice hook to get kids in our room. I stood outside with, I think it's Principal Blondheim from Hatton, and as people were coming by, introduced ourselves and asked them to come in the room, and the minute they heard free book, they're like, oh, we had line out the door, so that was pretty cool. Another thing I did recently, Akron Roundtable, I think David was there. I don't know if any other staff were there, but they had Dr. Scott Scarborough, the new president for the University of Akron, speak. On his first 100 days, though he's only been in position for about 30 days, but he's talking about what he wants to accomplish the first 100 days. But I thought the one thing he talked about, and I guess the national media sort of zeroed in on as well, is what he expects from the staff. And one thing was about picking up litter and having people take pride in the campus, and how he judges people based on looking out and seeing staff and whether or not they're picking up litter, and how they feel pride in where they are. So I thought that was sort of cool. And like I said, he talked about it for a little bit, and national media sort of picked up on that, so that was nice. And like everybody else, I was at the LeBron James Family Foundation picnic, and that was a lot of fun this past weekend.
I'll bootstrap onto Tim. I had the pleasure of being able to go to the LeBron James Family Picnic, which is also coupled, as most people know, with Wheels for Education and the I Promise programs. And it was really a great, I'd call it fabulous celebration of people and programs, and most important, excellence in education. You really learned a lot and saw a lot of bright, shining faces that are touched by these programs. In the whole evening, it was music. It was there was so much energy there, and as LeBron James kept saying, it was about the kids. It wasn't about anything else. And I don't know that the kids would agree with that. They were certainly excited to see LeBron James. But it was a beautiful night. As I said, so much energy. There was delicious food. Seeing the excited kids, and spent some time with the board members. Got to know some of their family a little bit, and that was very nice too. And it was nice to be a part of that. So that was my most recent, most fun thing.
I attended a gathering at the STEM Middle School with Patel, and the superintendent did a small presentation there, but just another opportunity where great tribute is being paid to the work we're doing around STEM learning, and particularly our teachers and people like Tracy Buckner. So that's always rewarding to see when we're in that kind of spotlight and realizing our reach in terms of the work that we're doing goes beyond our front doors across the state. So it was really nice to see those partners there, Event Now, the city, Mateo, and a host of other folks. And I too joined the group at the celebration. And it was nice to hear continually it's really about the kids. That he reiterated that time and time again, because it really is about the kids. But it was a wonderful celebration and a good time for us to get together with staff and with other board members and their families and just the community at large. So it was a wonderful celebration. So glad it's there. And to take a selfie on it. That will be online for sale, right?
Yeah.
It's quite a classic selfie.
It's a
I think it
classic
rivals
selfie.
the one from the Oscars, actually.
Right.
I was late getting there.
Or dodging us. So
Right.
you guys have to
I
be in
think
the
that was
center.
more likely.
Well, it's hard to beat Strickland's ice cream. I think that's what my kids were interested in.
Anyone else have anything they want to share? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for all of your time in the community. It's always wonderful when we can all be together, and I would piggyback off what Ms. Sims said. It was wonderful to be with the staff and the students and to see how happy everyone was to get that recognition. We have some really exciting news. We have a new treasurer that we are going to introduce to you and vote on tonight. Ryan Pendleton is to be our new treasurer. So I'm going to read you a little bit about him and tell you a little bit about the process. The board started in May as soon as we found out about Jack's retirement. And as saddened as we were to have Jack leaving, we needed to look forward to the future. And so the board set about finding Treasurer 2.0. We'd had Jack for 21 years, and it was time to figure out what that next evolution of treasurer was going to look like. We had OASBO, that is the organization that is their professional organization across the state, and they helped us with our search. We had, I believe it was 27 applicants, narrowed down to 9 interviews, narrowed down to 3 finalists, and Ryan immediately rose to the top. So I'm going to read you a little bit more about him. Tonight I have the pleasure of introducing you to our new treasurer, Mr. Ryan Pendleton. Ryan, do you want to come on up so that they see what you look like while I'm talking about you? We'll put you right on the spot. Mr. Pendleton received his bachelor's degree from Malone College in 1998 and his master's degree from Cleveland State University in 2003. He has also completed post-MBA coursework through Ashland University. Mr. Pendleton began his career in 1998 as an account manager for L.F. Leeper Company in Richfield, Ohio. In 1999, he joined, oh goodness, what is this one, Mr.? Gratry, thank you, and Company, as the Vice President of Research Operations. He worked there until 2005 and then joined the Barberton City Schools as their Assistant Treasurer. He worked in that capacity for 1 year, following which he was named the Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer. In this position, Mr. Pendleton was responsible for preparing the financial and budgetary requirements for the district, which included forecasting revenue, managing budgets, appropriations, and monthly reviews of operating expenditures. He assisted with the managing of the district's construction funds, and he has also assisted with negotiating with bargaining unit contracts. He is a member of the Ohio Association of School Business Officials, OASBO. He is also a 5-county chapter officer and past president for OASBO. He is also a board member of NeoNet, the Northeast Ohio Network for Educational Technology. We are very excited to welcome Mr. Pendleton and look forward to working with him in his endeavors. And so now I need a motion to accept him as our treasurer.
So moved.
Now that he's standing in front of me. and he's
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Sims and seconded by Mr. Alexander. Roll call. Oh, anybody want to say anything about the search or about Mr. Pendleton?
Well, I'll say something about the search. I want to thank OASBO and the superintendent and the individuals who assisted us. We've had opportunity over the years to have search for superintendents, but for 21 years there hasn't been a search for treasurer, so it was new for everybody on the board. And I think the board did a wonderful job of speaking to each other, sharing opinions. Opinions may have differed, but narrowing down the person that has been selected tonight. And I want to commend the board because I think everyone did an excellent job to go through this process in a timely manner. We didn't rush, and we were thorough, and I think, have chosen a wonderful candidate from all the persons that were presented to us. And as he comes aboard, we will get a chance to learn him. He will get a chance to learn us, and especially Sister Veronica Sims, who has a special heart for that department. So I think the board has done a wonderful job in moving through this process, and I personally commend everybody for the work that they've done to get us to this point. And I thank our president and our leadership for that.
And there were some long nights, long nights, but it was worth it.
I'd also like to just publicly thank all the applicants, the 9 candidates that were brought to us, all, I think, well qualified in their own, and the 3 finalists as well. It was not an easy decision, though I think we made the right decision. But once again, thank you to everybody who did take the time to come and talk to us and present to us as well.
I want to add too, I don't think that a lot of people know, and when we were conferring with OASBO about searching for a treasurer, that they were telling us, sometimes in districts you'll only have 2 or 3 people applying. And so it was a testament to what people think about this school district that we had an overwhelming amount of people applying, well-qualified people. I mean, it wasn't an issue of, we didn't have worthy people. We had to whittle it down from 9 or 10 to, I think we ended up with 3 or 4, and all those people were very talented people. So again, I think that's a testament to the district as well. And the overwhelming response we got from the applicants was they want to be part of a cutting-edge, looking-forward district. And I think that it's just a shout-out for our district that we're doing things the right way and people are interested in being involved. So that's again, it's nice to hear that, and it's nice to know we have people interested in taking the positions that are very delicate, responsible positions.
I would add to all of that and also commend the board. I think that's the right word. I think we worked really well together, narrowing down the candidates from 27 to 9 to 3, and they were very long nights. But to also commend Mr. Pendleton for making it through each stage and really rising to the top each time, and not just with us, but earning the confidence of the senior staff that he met with. So we really look forward to working with you. Well, pre-congratulations, but.
Now that I put you on the spot and made you stand here all this time. Also, I just want to tell you, if you all think you'd like 5-year forecasts, You should sit through 3 of them in a row, back to back. 3 hours of 5-year forecast is quite an experience. So thank you so much for bearing with us while we talk about you in front of you. Let's see, we have a motion and we have a second. Roll call.
Mrs. Sims.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Bravo.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi.
Yes.
Mrs. Manfield.
Yes?
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Everybody in?
It would be nice to vote.
Now we have everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so would you like to
First
say
the news
anything?
and
Sure, I would sure love to say thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be a part of the Akron team. I just can't wait. The staff here knows that I've been in the office a couple times already. I'll be back tomorrow morning to sit with my staff and just get to know them a little better. So couldn't be more excited. I'm joined here tonight by my family that could make it. My son just raised his hand. This is Clinton. My daughter Ella. My mother Miriam. My wife Kathy could not make it. She's hiking the Appalachian Trail with my father. This is their annual trip, so she couldn't make it, but I apologize for that. But thanks so much. It was a great process. I'm really glad you took the time to go through that process to make sure there was a feedback. Thanks so much.
Mr. Pendleton, I know your family probably deeply looks forward to district focus and other things, but if you, at any time going forward, if you want or you need to take them and go, you may feel free to do so.
Thank you so much.
All right, so Alan, you're up. Communications.
Well, tonight we are combining a couple different presentations that we typically do at this time of year into one presentation tonight. We're going to look at and review and remind everyone what our district focus strategies are that the superintendent rolled out at the beginning of last school year. The big rollout was at convocation. He went through the district focus strategy, so we'll review that. And then I'm going to give you a preview of our report card accountability results. Tonight, these are preliminary results. The results aren't final. We don't have the final reports yet, but this is always the tricky timing between trying to get the information to you when we get the final reports, and then it'll quickly turn around to the local report cards that get printed and published. So we were wanting to make sure to give you the preliminary results. It may change a little bit, and I'll show you where there might be a few changes, but for the most part, you'll be able to see the results that we have. And then from there, from the accountability results, David, we're tag teaming this presentation tonight. David is going to talk about the district focus strategies. Here's our results, and go right into, therefore, here's the aligned budget allocations that he's recommending tonight for discussion with the board. So he'll take over the second part. So to start, the 4 areas that we'll try to hit: the district focus, the preliminary results, and those resource allocations. And most importantly, for you to ask any questions prior to the publication of results in the newspaper, and especially around the accountability results. This is usually the meeting each time of the year that we try to do that personally. When we think about our district focus, This is the visual that represented our high-quality teaching and learning strategies the first 5 years. After David was first named superintendent, but middle to the end of his first year, he rolled out our district-focused strategies, our 5 big strategies. And this was the visual that captured the number one, what I always call as sort of the mothership strategy around high-quality teaching and learning. And everything on here regarding having a response to intervention system of how we deliver instruction across 3 tiers where we get high quality instruction, targeted interventions, and intensive interventions. Our professional learning communities, our instructional coaching, a new staff evaluation system, new school improvement process, all of this, everything on this visual that represents the strategies that we put in place the first 5 years have actually been accomplished. And so it was definitely time to take the next level of work. Not that we're getting rid of any of this, but we're ready to have the next series of our district focus, which is, you have this in a visual, the blue visual on the right side of your packets. It was time for us to take a look at the next series of strategies to deepen our work. Most importantly, and represented in this district focus, are 2 anchors before I talk about and remind you what the middle strategies are. The most important is the APS vision of the type of student that we are working to graduate. And if you look at those characteristics of an independent, caring, responsible, critical thinker, problem solver, a leader, when you think of that type of student, it alters the types of services and instruction that we have to provide. And that list of characteristics of the graduate that we want to have leaving, every single grade actually, not just in 12th grade, but every grade, when you start to think of those, it alters what happens in the middle. And then the results column, looking again at adding measures around our 21st century learners and being college ready so that you can get into the college of your choice, and having informed and engaged citizens. Those 2 anchors of the characteristics of the child and then how we're going to measure results hugely impact the strategies that ended up in the middle. And I'm going to go through each one of these focus areas. So the first focus area, high quality teaching and learning. 2 priorities. The new teacher evaluation system is in this focus area too, but basically 2 priorities. 1, making sure that we have high quality professional learning communities where teachers can come together and plan quality instruction and hold each other accountable for the results of that instruction. Constantly looking at assessment results and being able to meet weekly to do that. And the second thing is having this is our 5-step process that we use in our PLCs that's very data driven. So weekly, teachers are looking at their data, sharing and planning instruction together collaboratively, and then they go and do the instruction, and they come back and look at their results. So it definitely enhances the planning and the accountability around their instruction. The second priority is implementing this 3-tiered system. It's called response to intervention, where we have real specific criteria that if a student has certain testing results and grades, they end up getting specific interventions at the targeted and intensive level. We are working very hard last year and over the next 2 years to focus our energy around the core instruction that happens in every single classroom and make sure that we're pushing and challenging the enriched students and intervening with the lower performing students in this 3-tiered system.
Could you read the tiers? I can't.
This is the universal tier, targeted, and intensive. Yeah, the focus of the slides, I'm not sure why we might need to adjust next time. Not when everybody's here, but we'll climb up there and adjust. But it's the universal, targeted, and intensive. The idea is that that you want this to be the strongest, so that 80% of your students are getting appropriate grade level instruction at the universal tier, and that only a small percentage end up needing more targeted interventions. And then 1 to 5% of your students would need real intensive services because they're multiple grade levels behind. So all of our interventions are geared in this type of system. The focus area 2, which is the middle pillar or middle column on the visual, is around learning conditions. And we have a few priorities in this area around how we uniquely at every building do surveys to look at what learning conditions are needed to be worked on, and create unique strategies in each building to enhance those. So, for example, we've done the Summit Education Initiative is rolling out with Carla's guidance some surveys that can look at climate in a building. Do students feel like they have self-worth? Do they feel like they have mentors or heroes in their lives? Do they feel as though they're being pushed and challenged by their teachers? Do they feel respected? And that is the priority 1, is to have every school create strategies using those results to improve their learning conditions and their climate in their building. The alternative programming also goes into that priority and that strategy. The second one is building an infrastructure for extracurricular enrichment and electives. We realize, and I know this is new for all of us, that we have been in such a deficit mode over the years. David and I laughed that ever since he's been superintendent, he's just been cutting millions of dollars out of the budget every year. And I remember Dr. Small before that saying the same exact thing, that we realize that the education that we're providing, that we've lost a lot of the richness of the offerings that we offer. That it's scaled down to really basic core academics. We don't have nearly the electives and the enrichment and the clubs and all of that we believe really make for the rich education that we want all the children to have. And if you go back to the results and those characteristics of the kids that we want to graduate, you can't reach those results when you have sort of scaled back offerings and smaller number of offerings and students sitting in study halls rather than taking an engineering course or a photography course or a theater course or a stage management or whatever that richness. So we've built an entire strategy around trying to expand those offerings. And I have examples there of the types of elective courses. The other piece is digital offerings and wanting to hugely expand the menu of options that we can offer digital courses in the district. And then extending the school day and school year through expanding our unique partnerships with community members and wanting to try and pilot some things in that area. The third strategy under this learning conditions is looking at college access strategies pre-K through 12 and finding ways to engage students early on in the aspiration work of being able to go to college and really growing that aspiration in young children. And I have examples listed there of what that could look like. And then also expanding dual enrollment offerings in the district. Our dream would be that all students have the opportunity to get a year's worth of college under their belt by the time they graduate. And I think with the expanding the courses, expanding our digital footprint, being able to have a large menu of course offerings, I think we could do that. But that's what we're working towards. Every year we've been expanding our dual enrollment offerings. The fourth strategy is service learning and exploring requiring with you, having a discussion about requiring service learning credits as part of a diploma in the Akron Public Schools. Again, if we say that our results, we want to graduate students who are engaged citizens in this community, we have to find ways to build that into the work that they're doing in our schools every day in the classes. So we want to explore service learning credits to earn a diploma, and also explore pre-K to 12, having opportunities for service learning, even as in pre-K and in kindergarten, ways to engage in real neighborhood issues and concerns and volunteerism. And I know a number of board members have talked about this, and we've really captured it in a specific strategy now that we want to work towards. The last focus area that's on the visual is around collaboration and engagement with external stakeholders, with two priorities in this, and two priorities meaning strategies, but are major strategies. One is focused intentional connections with parents, and really looking at defining what that means, and creating systems of parent liaisons. We have parent liaisons right now in, I think it's 7 or 8 of 7 of our buildings, and we want to formalize that. We want to create a framework around that so that we can look at expanding that to more buildings across the district. We also want to look at expanding transitioning programs or transition programming for students, so that parents understand what's happening from elementary to middle school, and middle school to high school, even pre-K to kindergarten. And linking our parent contacts with partner agencies. Carla has been doing a beautiful job working with multiple agencies in town about linking their requirements for parent involvement with what's happening in school, so that we can have a tight relationship with them. And then the second priority is maximizing the business and community partnerships, and really finding a way to align those partnerships with everything that's on this district focus visual. So let's use them to support service learning. Let's use our partnerships to support the college access and career exploration, to really target our strategies for the involvement rather than just kind of a general partnership. So that's a high-flying look at the big priorities listed here in our district focus, all working to get to these key results that are more the 21st century work college-ready results. Now, what I want to do now is, yes,
On the collaboration and engagement with external stakeholders in the system of parent liaisons, what's the profile of the parent liaisons? How many of them are sort of involved in the existing network of PTA, or?
Yeah, here, Carla, either Carla or Mary, either one.
Mm-hmm. A number of the parent liaisons are former or current Akron Public School parents, and they have had a history of participation at their buildings level, and the grade level of their student, and so principals choose them to support work at the building level to connect with parents. Some of them are long-standing parent liaisons, others are new. Most are at the elementary level. We have 2 who are middle school parent liaisons. So we aspire to increase that and really focus on some intentional work to support parents in supporting learning at home, and to move away from some of the activity-based things that are going on that may be out of alignment with our district focus.
I know we've mentioned before, because we have some really amazing PTAs. They're certainly not what we hear they were years and years ago, and I know that we've said sometimes it's challenging to get the parents and sometimes it can be a challenge to get the parents involved in that way. But likewise, we've gone to some PTA functions where the T's are missing, the T's being the teachers. So to the extent that we can encourage sometimes in this framework and maybe in this goal or this priority, that maybe there's some emphasis put on that part too, that maybe that would stimulate something. But
Yeah, I think the important thing with this strategy is moving away from the single kind of events that really don't build the capacity of parents to support.
Relationship.
Yeah, and really build the relationship, have it more of an engaging, educational, forward, something that they can take away for the long term. Some of the parent academies that we used to do, where the parents were leading it peer-to-peer, was a great example that we'd like to get back to that format. And the parent liaisons can be key folks in that relationship. And the parent liaisons right now are funded out of Title I funds that the school uses towards hiring the folks. Any other questions about the district focus before we look at preliminary results? Yes.
Can I just make a real quick comment about the service learning? I'm really excited to see that piece in there. I know that Mr. Miller and I have really tried to, especially Tim has really pushed, and we've talked to Dan Rambler a lot about this. One of the pieces that I think is so important also is to realize, I think it'll be great for the community to realize how much our kids are already doing. I think that keeping it's not just getting them out in the community. I know when Toledo has said that when they did this, that just having the community actually recognize how much volunteering students do already, and recognizing that in them, it also takes that whole, well, these kids today out of the statement. There's not this, well, they're lazy, or they do this, or they do that. When it's, wow, look what they do. They do wonderful things. They work in soup kitchens, they work in community theaters, they work in churches, and they do all kinds of volunteering already. So knowing that that's who our kids really are.
I think we're very, very excited about that strategy, and I think there's good examples out there that we don't have to reinvent the wheel here, that we can, borrow and steal and create something. We've also looked at some statewide models too in Rhode Island that are, full statewide, that little kids are earning badges, sort of like the Brownies and the Girl Scouts, where you earn service learning badges for certain activities. That is also really interesting for us to look at, to make it not just a high school diploma piece, but an entire district. And again, I hate to keep saying this, but this is what David and I have been perseverating about, is once you identify these results, it's like you have to do service learning. Because if we're going to have engaged citizens who have this problem-solving type mindset, if you say that's what we're going to have, then you have to have something like service learning to get them engaged in community needs and neighborhood needs.
I think it's very exciting.
I have one comment. I like what we're saying here, because when I was at Cube a couple weeks ago, and I apologize for everybody being late, I was going to give an outline of what they talked about, but they talked about everything that you're talking about here, and it was the title of the conference was the Brown Imperative: Excellence, Equity, and Unity, which we're talking about here, and it was named after the Brown versus Board of Education because it's a 60-year anniversary. But it talked about all these things of what we're talking about here. And then I'm just going to give this one comment that one of the gentlemen who was a presenter stated that I'm trying to find it here. He said what they are. It's more important to know what the kids are becoming than what they have already accomplished. So they've accomplished, but look to where they're going, okay, and what they've learned, how they move forward ahead. So, I mean, it was really, really, really nice, and I think that what we're doing is right on the money, because nationwide, they're really getting into these type of things. They talked about a bunch about technology, but it was just good. I think I'm glad to see that we're doing all these things.
As soon as we captured words like leader, that we want our students to be leading with leadership skills, immediately we had to capture strategies to say, well, how are we building leadership skills? We have to partner with organizations or provide our own leadership development programs in all of our schools. And that, again, aligns right with what you're talking about. So in that context why we thought it was so important to review the district focus is to say, so this is where we're going, and we've identified these strategies for the next 5 years, just like the first set. Next 5 years, here's the next set of strategies. Now to look at, so where are we right now with our accountability results? And which will lead then into a resource discussion with alignment around that district focus. To remind you what the new report card that came out last year had these 6 components: an achievement graduation rate, prepared for success, gap closing, a progress value added measure, and then a new K-3 literacy measure. The composite grades, you see 2015 all the way across the top. The composite grade that we'll get for each one of these 6 areas isn't coming until 2015. Right now, we still have grades for little parts, little parts, little parts, little parts, little parts. And we don't have this big one district grade. That will come next summer, okay, in 2015. So what you'll see today is just smaller grades for certain parts as we go through. So the first part is this achievement, which has the performance index and then how many indicators we met. There are 4 things that have happened, and those the veterans on the board know that every year there's always some change in the report card. This year, the past couple years, it's been, last year was sort of this big change to this new grade report card versus the academic watch and the excellent district ratings. This year, they changed sort of 4 factors, 3 from the state and 1 that is a factor related to what we've done in the Akron Public Schools that's impacting the report card. And I'm going to start with those so you have that in mind as we go through. The first change from the state is this is a year that the benchmark for meeting the standard for the report card, meeting the achievement benchmark, went up. It had been the same for 10, 20 years, 15 years, however long the report card, this version of the report card for achievement, it has always been 75% is proficiency to meet an indicator. And this year is the year that they bumped that up to 80%. It was part of the federal waiver that went in that bumped it to 80%. 11th grade remained the same at 85%. So that alone, for any building or district indicators that were at 77, 78%, where a year ago we would have met it, this year we didn't meet it. So the bar was raised. The second thing that happened is the goal for meeting the achievement gap, where you look at subgroups, African Americans against all the kids in the state, white kids against all the kids in the state. They also jumped, that measure went up from 83.4 to 84.9, and in math 78.5 to 80.5. So 2 measures increase the bar that you had to hit. So those are 2 factors. The third is the assessments this year were duly aligned. All the test questions were aligned to the old standards, and they were aligned to the new Common Core standards, which meant the rigor with the new standards, the assessments are more rigorous, or at least a portion of the test was going to be more rigorous because they're now duly aligned to both the old standards and the new standards. This was kind of the transition year to PARC assessments that will be here this school year. So that's another factor. We had sort of braced ourselves that we figured we'd at best be flat and maybe have some drops during this transition year to the new standards. And then the last thing that had a huge impact with the high school is that in past years, as you know, we would retain 9th graders who didn't earn the credits needed to move on to 10th grade because they didn't pass enough classes. We retained them in past years. A year ago, you all, as a board, changed that. And we said, we're not going to retain students anymore. We're going to move a 9th grader who didn't pass their courses, move them on to 10th grade, but they will be identified as a non-credit 10th grader. So there'll be accommodations, interventions put in place. But because of the new park assessments coming, where you have to take a class and then take the test, we knew we had to move kids on now. We couldn't have 3rd year 9th graders sitting because they hadn't passed their classes. We had to move them on so that they would take the park assessments right with the course they were taking and have multiple opportunities to take the test. If we had continued to retain them, it would have thrown off that whole sequence of them being able to assess. So the outcome is, for the first time, we had a lot more 10th graders because these 9th grade students who normally we would have retained now took the test. And in years past, we didn't have them in the mix because they were staying still as 9th graders. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so a new group of kids who hadn't passed the test, so struggling academically, are now in the mix with our 10th grade. One time, kind of hit to our scores, because now they'll move on and it'll be a new baseline that we'll be working off of. But this 1 year, we had hundreds of additional kids come in that normally wouldn't have been testing. So those are 4 factors that just to consider as we move forward. So in reading, here's where we fell with reading. The way you read this chart is this is increases from a year ago, 2012-13, to the results this year, where the increases or the drops that we had. In a few weeks, when we get the final results, I'll be able to send you trend reports so you can see over 5 years how have our scores been increasing or decreasing. So we continue, this is the 3rd or 4th year in a row that we've had more steady increases in reading. These are much smaller increases. I mean, these are 0.2 increase compared to what we've seen in past years. Again, I will take this because of the more rigorous assessments with the dual alignment with the new standards. The high school 10th grade, you'll see in all the slides, the high school 10th grade took a hit because of the shift with the 10th grade. We ran the numbers, and I'll be able, as soon as our numbers are final from the state, I'll be able to send it to you. We actually took the non-credit kids out so you could see what the results were, and all of our high schools increased their results without the non-credit students in. So comparing with last year to this year. But it's a new baseline. It absolutely is a good decision to have the students moving on. So we just have to make this adjustment this year and then move forward. Math, we didn't fare as well. Math, we saw 3rd grade and 5th grade. We saw some nice substantial increases, but then we saw drops across the board, small drops, but still drops, except for 10th grade again. We saw a bigger drop in math. I want to kind of point out, this is our 3rd grade reading, because we've all been spending so much time on the 3rd grade guarantee. Students, if you look, this is reading on the right-hand side and math. I just want to celebrate and highlight the incredible work that our 3rd grade teachers did this year under the leadership of Mary Kelly to have these isn't that the picture perfect trajectory of improvement that we want in every single grade level? And I think it's a real testimony to a group of teachers really, really focusing their energies, their attention. We focus resources around 3rd grade to get these type of results. Science and social studies, we also didn't fare well in the secondary. Again, the impact of the 10th grade, 5th grade science improved, but we saw a hit in the other grade levels in 8th grade, 10th, and 11th grade science. In 11th grade, it was very small drops, but we still saw drops. And this is hard, obviously, for us to see after a few years of kind of some pretty good gains across the board. This is a tough year for us to adapt to. It is, next year is park, or this year is park. I can't say next year, it's here. This year is the new park assessments that are fully aligned with the Common Core. So I think that just like this year and next year, we need to brace ourselves that when the bar is raised with the new standards, we're establishing new baselines for us to move forward. And my guess is the park assessments are going to be tougher than the ones even this year. So the end result, and I'll show you a summary at the end, but this is our report card grade. That is the same as last year, but we only met 2 indicators versus 5 last year because of the increased bar moving up to 80%. So we dropped 3 indicators, which again is tough for us to see when we had been building indicators over time, and then they raised the bar and then we dropped back down. So it's tough. It's a tough thing. Do you want to look at that a little bit longer, Tim? I saw you leaning forward. Our performance index score, this shows our performance index result in the green bar. We did see a small drop in our performance index score. The primary reason is the high school scores that you saw and the untested. We had more untested tests than we've had in years this year. Some of that was in our alternative settings, that we had some gaps in getting all of the kids tested who are in contracted alternative settings. We're going to close that gap for sure, because you get 0 points for any student that's supposed to test that doesn't test. And we saw an increase, dramatic increase this year in the untested students, and that's the major reason why our performance index dropped, which is unexcusable, especially in a district that's so conscientious about testing, that we had some gaps. I know where they are. We've analyzed those, and Howard and I are going to close that gap this year, that we'll never have that happen again. But just so you know, that's an issue. Last year we had 70% here, and we had a C, and because of an increase in the number of students being untested, we dropped to 69.6%, and we dropped down to a D. This is the only grade that dropped like this. Okay, progress value added is the next measure. That comes in September, so I'll share that when we get it. We don't have that measure yet. A graduation rate, good news is our graduation rate, we have always been the top in the Ohio 8, and we're not at the bottom in this county either. We're right in the mix with many districts in this region. And our graduation rate went up. Our 4-year graduation rate took a nice, beautiful trajectory up, and our 5-year rate also increased, which is outstanding because of the services that we provide. And we just, as you know, when we do that fall graduation, we never let kids stop working towards graduation in this district. So that was exciting news. Despite that increase, despite that great news, the report card still will show an F in the 4-year graduation rate. You can see how close we are to the orange bar on the dial, and that will get us up to a D. But remember, this report card isn't about progress. You don't get points like you used to in the old report card, where if you made progress, your rating went up. This isn't about progress. This is about, did you hit the bar or not? And unfortunately, even with that huge increase that we had in our 4-year graduation rate, we're still in the F category and D. And this is exactly where we were last year as well. Gap closing, I will be able to share that with you. Right now, we believe that's going to be the same as last year also. When we get the final reports, I'll be able to show you visuals that show African American, Hispanic, American Indian, and break it down by subgroup. and we'll get that as soon as the report cards get published. It'll look like this. It'll show you the actual breakdown. We don't have these reports yet. There is a new K-3 literacy, and you have a yellow sheet that explains that. You don't need to look at it now, but I gave it to you so that you have that information later. We will be getting a grade on how many students are at-risk readers and whether we're decreasing the number every single year. We'll get a grade this year on that in September. We don't have that right now. And we'll get that in subsequent years as well. They'll be tracking at-risk readers, just like third grade guarantee, but they'll be tracking to make sure we're decreasing those numbers. And then the last one is prepared for success, which this year these will be reported. Next year they'll be graded, and we'll be rated on all of these areas. How many dual enrollment credits, college admission test, which is ACT, AP participation, IB participation. There'll be a grade based on all of these measures. So this is the other new one. This year it'll be reported but not graded, and next year it'll be graded. So you can also see why our district-focused strategies link to a lot of these things on this, because that's a new measure for us to be held accountable for those. So here's the summary. The grades are in the little bubbles all the way around. You can see when we're getting certain measures. The prepared for success, we won't get a grade. And you can see the grades that we've earned so far as of today. And then I'll be back in September when we get the report card. Questions about the accountability results? Yes, Tim.
Can we go back to gap closing? I'm not understanding what
Yes.
that is. I mean, we're so far off the scale there. What is that supposed to be showing us?
This is last year. The gap closing shows you, it's broken down by subgroup. So it has special ed, limited English proficient, African American, and it shows your students here in the Akron Public Schools against the performance, typical performance across the entire state of all students. So it's measuring the gap, and you get points for whether you're closing that gap and kind of how quickly you're closing the gap. So your grade is based on, are you closing the gap or not?
So they're comparing us against an average for the typical 10th grader per se.
It's actually all performance across all grade levels. It's not grade by grade. It's the typical performance of all students in reading across the state. They started that a year ago as the baseline, and then every year it increases 2%, 2% higher, 2% higher. So the baseline that we've got to hit keeps moving, or the benchmark that we have to hit keeps moving.
But the benchmark is the average or the highest in the state then?
It started as the average, and then they add 2%.
Free.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it started as the average. So it's supposed to reflect the typical performance, but they're adding 2% every year to that. Yeah, so these, like this bar is Asian, and I'm sorry that we're not focused real well, but this is the Asian Pacific. The yellow is all students. The orange is limited English proficient. So you can see you can go down once you get the results this year. Once they format it this way, I'll be able to show you exactly each of our subgroups where they are against the benchmark. This is the benchmark for graduation, math, and reading. Okay, this is the students with disabilities here, and so there's a gap. So you get certain points for each subgroup depending on whether you've been closing the gap. And that's a brand new measure for us. That was brand new last year.
Can I just bang my head against the wall one more year in a row and say how hard this is to explain to the average person?
Absolutely.
Because the average person sees D and F and says it's 50% is an F and an 80% is an F. So this is just me banging my head against the wall. This is not anything we can change. This is set up by the state legislature. there's nothing that we can do to make this make sense. If
Right.
you're going to make an A through F scale, an A through F scale should be what the average person thinks an A through F is, and when an almost 80% is an F,
Yeah.
I can't, they, when we go out and we try to explain this, everyone looks at us like we are making it up.
And I think we really hit that last year when we were looking at this, that every measure has a different scale. You know,
Right.
which is what makes it that
Because
much more
I
complicated.
can't even do it without the key in front of me. If I'm somewhere and I'm trying to explain this, I can say, well, I know the graduation rate, you have to hit, you know, X, Y, or Z, but then with value added, it's a totally different scale. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, I know it's nothing that we can do, but it's just, it's soul sucking and just demoralizing to have to look at that F and that D and have them be a 78 and an 82%.
Right.
And I know no one seems to care really what we think or our parents think, but it's so patently unfair to the staff, first of all, because we walk into these buildings every day and we don't have D or F staff. And I don't think we have D or F students either. I might have been a D or F student, but I don't think we have D or F students either. But to tell them, and certainly anytime you do a rank order, someone's going to be first and someone's going to be last. And anytime you rank order across any measure, there's always going to be a high and a low. But to tell students that they're in a failing school when clearly I don't think they are, I think is just so unfair to our students and staff. And it is hard to see this, and we'll pick ourselves up and move on, you know, like you suggested. But seeing this just is so disgusting, I think, sometimes, to do that to our kids. And we certainly have some challenges. We're an urban school district. But I hope our staff understands that we don't look at this either as a reflection on what they're doing, and that our students don't think that we're looking at this as a reflection of their abilities. It's because it's really disgusting.
Yeah, fundamentally, what our approach to this, and what I'm very excited that David is working with Howard Lawson on, is this is our measure from the state. So it is our reality. We have to pay attention to this. We have to be accountable to this. At the same time, we can identify, based on our district focus, the areas and the strategies and the measures that we need to measure ourselves underneath this that show us the progress towards better results here. Because we have to honor the progress that we're seeing. Otherwise, we'd be changing strategies every 2 days because we think we're all failing and it's not working. When you look at our third grade results, something hugely is working there. Now, does it show up as an A on here or a B on here? No. You don't ever see that huge progress in third grade. You don't ever see that we have 99% of our kids who met the scores, and now we're down to 11 kids who are still at risk for being retained. Nobody sees that in this. So we have to build that, and David has asked Howard to build a dashboard for us that reflects our measures, that picks up the progress underneath this, that we're going to be holding ourselves accountable to, rather than only this big picture thing that sometimes doesn't reflect what's happening underneath. So, if we all take a deep breath. We've been spending, the principals in the room have been spending time with me looking at all of these results. So they've had some time to soak it in and be able to find the progress underneath it, and they'll be doing that at secondary SIP this week and elementary SIP next week. So now let's shift to the so what of this. Based on this data, and based on that context of the district focus, how do we adjust moving into this year, and how do we adjust our resources and our priorities? And I'm going to turn it over to David. Yes.
Before we get to that part, last year, when the grade card came out, we talked about some 4th or 5th grade strategies we introduced beforehand, and so we looked to see these scores. I guess my question is, and I don't know if it's possible, I know I'm gonna need help trying to explain this one more time, but it seems like, because there's certain things that we know, and I know I hear you saying that we still have to be, we're in Rome, we gotta do like the Romans, we gotta be accountable for it. Is there anything you foresee now that we need to be anticipatory about now that we can kind of head that off so we don't see the scores? I mean, I don't even know if I feel like crying, you know, and I hear what you're saying, and that kind of makes sense to me as I'm here, but I don't know how to, it don't make sense to me.
What we all need to be talking about right now, moving into this year, is the new park assessments and the end of course exams. Those are new, hugely more rigorous. They've been warning folks in the teaching and learning that most districts, all districts, suburban districts, everybody expect at least a 1 or 2 grade level drop because they're that much more rigorous. So that's already, we know, moving into next year. We already saw a tough piece here, and it's going to be even tougher. And the only way that we can look at it, it's a new baseline for us. And just like we've done in past years, when the baseline changes, we embrace it and we start moving forward and working towards progress. That's the only thing that we can do. But know that it's going to be tougher than what you're seeing here. And I hate to bring all this loving, wonderful news, especially for the superintendent, but it's going to be tougher.
Right. But for us, you know, we're still trying to spin the tide of students leaving and all this wonderful stuff. You know, it looks different for us versus, say, our more affluent districts that are doing what seems to be a lot better. And so,
yeah. We can have, we have help camps with our staff all the time, and we can have a help camp with the board on looking at this and coming up with some talking points in terms of how to talk about it now and how to talk about it moving forward. Yes?
I had 2 questions. With the students who didn't take the test, were there any specific reasons why they didn't take that test? You were saying earlier some were untested.
We talked to, we looked at every single student because we couldn't believe that we had so many untested tests that didn't get administered. And we looked at every single one. The major issue was truancy, students not coming to school, and same thing in the alternative settings. It was an issue of trying to get them in during that testing. They were absent, calling off, and trying to get them in. Now, we have ways that, you know, our principals go and park outside the houses. They drag kids out of the house. They bring them in. We've had principals administer tests in the parking lot because the student wouldn't go in the building, but the parent would keep them in the car, and we've given the test in the car with the principal and a lawn chair next to them. I mean, we go to extreme measures, and these are real stories. So we just need to close the loop to make sure everyone's on board with that and make sure that the weak areas that we did have in our schools where we had some increases, that we take care of that.
Okay, and in 3rd grade literacy, you said these students will be tracked. Will they be tracked all year, or will they be tracked just certain times of the year?
For the K-3 literacy, yes. It's at the beginning of every year, they'll look at kindergarten, how many kids, and then they'll look at a measure of 1st grade at the beginning of the year, and you have less, when the kindergartners move to 1st grade, you have less students who are at-risk readers. And then they'll look at 1st grade at the beginning of the year to 2nd grade beginning of the year, you have fewer students. So every year you have to have fewer students.
Okay, so it'll be yearly?
So you have, in other words, you have to remediate their reading early on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, on the left hand of your packet is a summary of budget strategies moving forward. Now, for those of you who haven't been here or are newer to the board, Ellen is right. We cut so much out of the budget over the years. And just looking at our 5-year forecast, you know, trying to restore some of the things that were cut. You have to remember, I have to mediate the disputes between Mary Kelly, who says elementary is the foundation, Mr. Black, who is looking at revised graduation requirements, Dr. Hoynes, who's had Title I money cut, and resources that either have to be taken away from schools or somehow put into the general fund. So that's really the gist behind this, looking forward at the challenges. And then, when Mr. Pendleton comes in tomorrow, I'm going to make a beeline for him and give him some of this information, because we'll have to look at our 5-year forecast moving forward to make some adjustments, depending on what the board decides. So what we're doing today is just a real quick overview. You have, another couple of weeks to review that and get any additional information from us so we can make some decisions, at least preliminary moving forward. Some of the things that we've done, with Race to the Top going away, some of the things we felt were very important and have, in the past, have made sure that we've kept those in the general fund, such as our Aspiring Principals Academy, with a number of principals who've been leaving and retiring, having that pipeline developed, increasing some of the counseling at some of our schools like Bridges or Booked with Behavior Coach. Closing the achievement gap, that's very important when you look at the chart on where some of our various groups of students are compared to the majority students. So we have 7 closing the achievement gap liaisons, our consulting teachers for the peer review and assistance to really help our newer teachers and existing teachers come in and really provide them the support that they need. Our ACT and AP exams, those are, things that we've already looked at and have done. And then at the last board meeting, we've looked at, for instance, our gifted population identified students has increased, so we agreed to add 3 gifted teachers to provide that support. Our collaborative at the Reach Opportunity Center in Summit Lake, providing an educational assistant. That's where we have 2 kindergarten classes to transition students from Head Start into kindergarten more effectively. And then adding some things for our elementary and middle schools, such as the band and strings and then foreign language. And then the work that we've done with our Akron Opportunity Center, moving it over to there. Those are some of the things that we've looked at and things that I think the board has agreed that we should move forward on. But, getting to our focus areas now and looking at some of our data from the report card, at least the initial data, and we'll see how that might change over the next several weeks into September. But, we do have to go a lot deeper with our data. And we really have to take that data and adjust our instruction and change some of the things that we're doing. It's not just classroom pieces, it's also district data and how we operate. I've always said the pie really isn't going to change, but we're going to have to slice it up a little bit differently moving forward. And so, through our whole professional learning community piece, we need to go a little bit deeper and then make those connections a lot tighter, in terms of collaboration and working to improve instruction across the district. So some of the things that we're looking at, for instance, with our language arts and our Algebra 2 adoptions, we have to do professional development for those. If you look at some of the work that we've done through the Institute for Learning at the University of Pittsburgh, where we've had a lot of our English language arts and math teachers go through training about going deeper into that content and how do we relay that content to our students. The tests that our students are going to have to go through will be a lot more rigorous. Developing a lot of tests that will measure student growth as we go through our year. I mean, this past year we had our MAP testing, learned a lot from that, but we're going to have to go further with those tests. And then looking at, because of the load and tests in terms of 3rd grade reading guarantee, our MAP assessments and all these others, is looking at a person across the district to help coordinate and lead all of those tests so that we're getting that information. And then again, the board has said, and we've done this every year, monitor our class size. I think our average is about 23 I think, across the district, but occasionally we'll have class sizes that are at 29 or 30. When the principals notify me through their executive directors, we always look at those to try and reduce those class sizes so they're more manageable, particularly with all the loads in terms of testing and assessment that's across the district. You know, in terms of looking at these pyramids of intervention and differentiating our instruction, you know, looking at this support and training, that intense support and training for our people out in the building. And again, as I mentioned before, because of these new adoptions. And also really, you know, trying to work on expanding some of the work that we've been doing at the STEM school with problem and project-based learning and to help develop these 21st century skills in our students. Under our budget priority, what I'm calling priority 2, and these are more systemic and more long-term changes. Remember, we're supporting the expansion of International Baccalaureate and the Firestone Cluster. So there are some requirements in terms of funding for staff and additional training for the teachers and staff in both Litchfield and in Case, and then looking at the potential for expanding it to Resnick and Portage Path. Our third grade reading guarantee, we have to do these summer academies and additional tutoring that has to be offered, similar to the old supplemental education services under No Child Left Behind. And again, looking at expanding our STEM-focused programming. You know, I've talked a lot about wanting to see a medical-focused program to kind of take our healthcare in progress program to another level. I think now with, you know, our hospitals, all of them pretty much, probably with the exception of Children's with partners, such as Summa with Catholic Health Partners and Akron General with Cleveland Clinic, it may provide us some unique opportunities for partnerships. In addition to the Biomed Academy at NeoMed, who's also a member of our STEM hub, I think we have a good opportunity to take advantage of those connections and really increase the opportunities for our students to enter healthcare fields. Again, I met with some folks from the University of Akron this week, or last week, talking about a program, Colleges for Real, and bringing that program potentially to Akron Public Schools, where the college students are actually mentoring our students and helping them, you know, build that college-going culture. That's just one of the things, you know, looking at that we need to look at in terms of really building that kind of post-secondary training and culture. And then it's also important that we don't forget, you know, students who do have disabilities, and we also have some legal requirements for those students. So you'll see in the narrative the requirement for another psychologist and maybe an occupational therapist and some other staff related to our special education population. And then really looking at taking some of these processes that we've learned and really embedding them in each of our schools, particularly processes that we know work, and then expanding I really believe this, we need to expand the menu of offerings we have in terms of courses, and I think primarily through digital means and online and blended learning. That is something that I think we're lacking. I think it's an opportunity for some populations in the district, such as our homeschool population, and also through dual enrollment. I think we can offer a lot more alternatives for kids and electives. I think we need to look at our home instruction process and maybe go to more of an online and blended version for that to reach more kids and to give more flexibility. And, you know, we should remember at some of our schools, like Firestone, we have some students who don't get lunch because they are involved in so many activities that they have a class and they're eating in the classroom. Well, maybe some of these online options might provide an opportunity for them, you know, to really take some of the extra classes during the off time through an online portal. And again, you know, there was some work done by the Ohio 8 several years ago called Leading the Parade, and it was really, I took a lot of those ideas from that report where we really sat down and kind of looked at some of the movers in terms of the future of education and really making our whole community, the classroom, both through, in-person experiences to online experiences, I think is what's needed. So looking at some of the things that I think can even push us further, the one thing you've all seen the kids from Kraus who won, I think, the championship, I don't know how many years in a row. I wish I could dance that well. And dancing classrooms, well, that was funded out of Race to the Top, and we want to push that and continue it. And some of the narrative describes the funding for that. I would like to pilot, I've talked about this for a long time, really extended learning. I think we should look at some of our tutors that, we want to hire tutors to help after school. Maybe we need to change the time of our tutors so they come in late and stay later. Digital literacy and the way our libraries are structured, particularly at elementary school, I think we need to take another look, partner with Dave Jennings and the Akron Summit Library. And again, I will continue to say this, I don't think we're going to get where we need to go until we really, expand the potential for us to partner, with other districts and offer extended opportunities, again, through digital learning. And there's a whole host of pilot budget requests in the narrative to support all of these. And then the whole piece on parent liaisons, I think, is very important because, I'll get calls in my office that Marilyn loves to forward to me. Well, she does try to get them to other people, but I will talk to parents who have issues, and a lot of those issues can really be addressed at the building, but there is an issue sometimes in buildings with trust. And I think having, the friendly grandmother or grandfather or, adult at a building that we've seen where we have existing parent liaisons really does help. And it's just a way of kind of reaching our parents or someone who isn't really, who's viewed as part of the system, someone that has that, they have that sense of trust because they're in the community, they're involved with kids and through their church or what have you, and really look at that model and how we can, restructure our current system and really kind of develop a different focus for parent liaisons, more in terms of customer service and really trying to help schools solve problems at the lowest level before they rise up, through the district. And again, it doesn't fall on deaf ears when we hear, some of the things and you see the signs up in our competition, in the city in terms of charter, parochial, and what have you. It is a very competitive market out there, and we have to adjust some of the things that we're doing and be more responsive. And so, the issues, for instance, with Summit for Kids and not having some folks there to do enrollment or looking at some of the events over the summer where our competitors are there enrolling kids, we need to think about some of those ideas as well. I remember I was talking with somebody, and I can't remember, maybe it was Carla, about maybe we should have some table at Acme #1 at Giant Eagle, if they'll let us, and get people as they're coming in the grocery store. Because you're right, we have to keep our kids and try and grow, our population. So one of the items in there is looking at a lead parent liaison to really coordinate better these folks in the building and to look at the potential, could we expand that program, either through some stipend or even volunteer opportunities or working through the PTA. I think there's a lot to be said for partnering, continuing our partnership, with the PTA. And then again, budgeting for better marketing and communications with our families. But also it's important to understand, and I really give them a lot of credit in terms of the foundational supports for all the work that we do. One of the things that we came up at the University of Virginia, what is it going to take to get all this stuff done? Well, one is going to take, human resources department that's really there, hiring the best people, promoting the best people, managing our human capital and talent, and then technology. And so I'll just mention it now instead of under new business, but there are 3 positions that I'm advocating for that I feel are the most important. One is, of course, position of our data and accountability, because that's very important now. We really need to take a new look. Our EMIS rules are changing, so how we count students. I know, I think you all know about some of the issues that have happened around the state with the auditor and looking at attendance. Well, all of the rules are going to be rewritten and changed. That's important. Also building that dashboard where we can see more of this data on the fly and quickly to make better decisions. And it's also important to, have our technology department, I think, improve their service to the district, because that's the one area where we all get complaints. Not, when the email system goes down and you all complain that I'm not answering your emails because I don't even see them, on my phone, which is my primary way of communicating because I'm always on the run, that's a problem. And so we really need to, I think, have some better oversight. They're hardworking people, but that department has always been really understaffed. And then another one is, how are we going to get these innovative practices out in the district when, Mark Black is busy supervising the high school principals, Mary is, busy turning the elementary principals against me. How are we going to, get all that? And I think having a person who's leading our innovative programs, these creative partnerships, with the hospitals, with other universities, taking some of the things that we've learned through problem-based learning and really expanding it. I think we want to look at, with our facilities plan, with the, some of the buildings that we have, to look at some of our educational standards to make sure that we're building true 21st century facilities, to have them really meet the demands of a high-powered educational foundation for our kids. So I think that's an important position. The other one is adding someone who can really take this digital learning to the next level. I mentioned before being contacted by someone from Reynoldsburg and looking at some of the things that they're doing with another provider for digital learning. And I think that is something, looking at partnering with our library system, just trying to do some things where we can really expand that opportunity for kids to excel, because many of them have that opportunity today, in their college campus. I was looking at my son's college courses, and there's a section, that they're saying, well, you can have this course either in person or online. So I think we're going to see more of that. And I also think it's a way for us to offer more variety, in terms of some of the electives for our students. And I think it also gives us the ability to partner with other districts, as I mentioned before, with the Biomed Academy at Neomed. They offer a lot of courses that are very unique that I think our kids will get a lot out of, particularly in our own type of healthcare or biomed program, kind of expanding on our Project Lead the Way Bioscience at North High School. So again, it's just a summary of the some of the budget requests. And Mr. Miller is correct. In the one spreadsheet that I sent you, and I'll update it, there was one spreadsheet missing which had the 7 assistant principals and deans and the 1 dean for Kenmore High School, which was, I want to say, a total about $830,000, which was the difference between the 2 spreadsheets. So we'll send an updated one to you and upload it to your iPad. So are there any questions? Yes.
I have this is a lot of stuff.
I know, that's
Right.
why we're saying, we're not asking for any
Right.
decisions tonight, but, digest it and then get Ellen and I, any additional in-depth questions, but.
Right. I mean, we talked about a lot of wonderful things, and I really like what I heard. But even as I look at that pyramid, universal, and then the extra intensive, so much good stuff. But still,
It is
there's this gap.
Right. It is a lot.
And so my question would be, how do we ensure
Well, that's the logic behind the pyramid, because see, at the universal tier, that's what everyone gets.
Mm-hmm.
At the targeted tier, that's for people like me. And then sometimes I'm at that intensive tier where as you go up the pyramid, you're typically dealing with smaller numbers of people. But you put the resources at that pyramid, so it's kind of like, in business, we talk just-in-time inventory. So the resources are there at the right time for those kids. So for each level of the pyramid, you're getting the right resources and targeting the right resources to those folks. So at the base of the pyramid, it's everyone. For people who might have a little bit of issues, you'll go into the targeted, and then for those who have severe issues, it's at the top. And we've kind of organized the district around that whole pyramid. I won't say pyramid scheme, but a pyramid plan where, there's like a behavior pyramid. And so for universal tier, everyone gets that. And then when you get targeted and you get intensive, those resources will change based on that. And so that's how you eliminate the gaps, because you're actually differentiating the resources that are going to kids depending on whether it's their behavior, whether it's the language or math pyramid or what have you across the district.
Hopefully some of the drilling down and the dashboard stuff will help us to see that more clearly, because I'm not sure if that...
And when we, a couple of years ago, a group of us went to Nashville to look at a program they were doing around their career academies. And the one thing that impressed me was a superintendent had a dashboard, and he could, we don't like saying drilling down, but he could narrow it down to the individual classrooms in the district. And so they could see school, they could see it by grade level, et cetera. And that's really important. And we have some of that capability in our current e-school. And so we're looking at the potential for exploring that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
A couple different observations. I know one, as far as, I guess, first question for clarification purposes, the numbers you've given us as far as costs, those are inclusive of the fringe benefits?
Yes.
Round numbers, okay. As far as the majority of these positions, will they be considered 12-month positions? And the reason I ask that, I'm looking at our district focus, and we want lifelong learners, but we have kids that aren't year-long learners in our school district.
Right.
And, I'll beat this drum again. I think we need to do something to our calendar so we don't have this drop-off of knowledge, and then September's always, review every year for a lot of kids. I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but I'm hoping we're looking at 12-month positions.
No, and you're absolutely right, and I've thought this for a long time, with just the professional development for our staff. I mean, I know I won't be popular for saying it, but this is the only place that I know of that people aren't working all year long. I mean, we have some, but the majority are off.
Right.
But you know what, that's a good opportunity to hone your skills, and then you're right, we need to look at our calendar a little bit differently. So we don't have that drop off, and we floated a couple of ideas. One is, whether we add a 0 period to the day or something, or another at the end of the day for our secondary students, and allow kind of some flex time for some of the staff. So we don't necessarily, might not have to hire additional staff, but if we could figure out a way to smartly expand the coverage, we could cover kids at the end of the day who might need some additional time. And then for those who don't, maybe they get the option to not do that or participate in some of these recreational and exploratory opportunities, whether it's exploring, college, going to an ACT study group, like doing ZAPs or something like that.
Also, I just hoping that if we're actually serious about trying to get rid of that summer gap, that as we create these new positions, they're created with the thought process of being 12-month positions for the intervention, for all the different things. Another question, don't really want the answer now, but as you're looking at the 5-year forecast, you had mentioned, Race to the Top, those funds are expiring. So are there other programs funded by Race to the Top now that we can look towards in the future that you would want to fund out of general fund, and how's that going to affect the 3-year forecast?
I think the majority of them have already been incorporated kind of in like the 5-year forecast that was approved. There were a few that weren't. There's only about, I think, 300,000 left in Race to the Top that we're actually using this year for some real targeted things that we've worked with the state of Ohio on, with the Department of Ed. But we knew that was going to happen, and the majority of those things have, we've kind of already done those. I won't say under the radar, but we just agreed to do them, like the ACT test fees for all of our students in their junior year. There's a few other ones, but I think the big thing of Race to the Top has been the process. of going through and really doing better evaluations on some of the things that we're doing. So I think kind of out of that, we've come up with these 90-day plans where we're evaluating these things in these 90-day cycles. And then that whole continuous improvement loop of going forward. And those aren't really things that are costing, you know, but they're just kind of a leftover of the processes that we use the rest of the time.
And then just one more comment, under focus area 2, learning conditions, and to go back to what you said about, you know, certain kids being so busy they don't get a lunch period. Personal experience, there's a lot of kids don't want a lunch period because of the climate in the lunch periods in our high school. So I think we have to keep in mind, you know, that part when we're looking at our district focus as well.
One of the things we talked a little bit about last year was the disadvantaged dollars. You know, we really never got really, you know, clearly how. Like, I was looking at some of the tutors that were kind of replacing from Title I money. Would those funds be able to be used for that instead of coming out of general fund?
Well, they reduced the Title I. See, those were paid for out of Title I, but because of the reductions in Title I, they were going to have to go away. So instead of taking them out, we decided to absorb them in the general fund so they can continue, you know, that important work. And then those disadvantaged funds, and, you know, I was part of the conversation when Jack asked the state, how can we use them? And they basically didn't give us any guides. You can use them really for however you want to use them. And we'll come back later and tell you if you did it right or wrong. Is basically, that was the answer. That was the answer. They gave really no strict guidance on how those are to be used. They say, you know what your targeted populations are, where we're not going to tell you how to use it, but if you do something wrong, we'll let you know.
I'm just looking at the schools, that's what I was wondering. Could those funds, any of those funds be used for this instead of coming out of the general?
The disadvantaged funds are general fund dollars. It's just how we're using them.
Okay.
Yes.
I know we've talked, sorry, did you have something?
Go ahead. I'm the last one anyone sees.
I didn't see you either.
You're right.
I know we've talked about this before, but would you be able to provide us something then that would show us the sort of the value of the essentially the proposals that you're making here and the impact on the 5-year forecast?
Yeah, I think we'll do.
Particularly in light, I think, of some of the information that we've found out since we adopted the May 5-year forecast, the property valuation, the decline in Summit County property valuation. And so I don't know if this is a project for Ryan before he starts. God bless him, he's going to be so busy when he gets here. But because I know you'd like us to, sounds like maybe consider this at the next board meeting or shortly thereafter. But if there's some way that we can get some information on how this might impact the 5-year forecast, that'd be great.
Yes.
David, I had a question about the pyramid we're using for universal, targeted, and intensive students. It looks to me it's supposed to represent the fact that the majority of our students do not need extra help. I'm wondering, dollars-wise, do you guys have an idea of what the amount of dollars percentage-wise is spent on the targeted and intensive groups versus the universal groups? Is it a small proportion? Yet that data that anyone has thought to look at, just from a standpoint of allocation of our resources? And
I'm gonna, that's gonna be Howard's job.
okay.
But that's a valid point. I think when you look at, per unit cost, so cost per student, I would venture to say a kid in the intensive tier is gonna have a higher cost per student than someone in the universal tier. And the same thing for the targeted tier, because usually they'll have, if it's a kid who has an IEP, there might be some additional staff that's required in addition to a tutor. Like if you're a vision, person, or you're in hearing impaired, you're in a classroom that has a lot of other equipment in it, or you may need some other assistance. So I would venture to say yes. But as we look at, dashboards, and there's another group with our Summit County Superintendent saw this presentation from another company that'll do the same dashboard, and they're not really focusing so much on the academics, but it's more on the cost side and comparing districts. And I have that information. I've taken a look at their website, but the name escapes me now of how they were doing some of that work. So yeah, there is the potential for doing that and looking at students in that way.
Yeah, because I figured it would be a higher per pupil amount. You'd say it's 5,000 per student person's here, and maybe 5,500 to 6,000 for the targeted and so on. But I'm wondering, in a percentage of dollars we have to work with as a board, what is that number for those top two? Just curiosity, and wondering, is that proportionate to the other urban districts? And I expect that it's going to be higher than the suburban districts because of our challenges.
And I'll look on the, in the finance section of your Ohio Department of Education website, there are some reports that might get to that, because we reviewed them around the table at senior staff during our previous budget hearings, because Jack would always complain about like our staffing ratios, whether we look the same as Toledo, because we would always compare ourselves to them because we're a similar size. So I'll see what they have on there about that. All right. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a lot to take in, so I appreciate everyone's patience and understanding. Moving on to our next part of the meeting, we need approval for the meeting minutes for both the regular meeting for July 28th and the special meeting of July 30th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Reverend Walker, seconded by Mrs. Sims. Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Reverend Walker. Yes. Mrs. Sims.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Bravo.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi.
Yes.
Making sure.
I like to go first every now and then, so I appreciate you mixing it up.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
You are. Sometimes might cross the bear, I'll tell you what. There we go. All right, so moving on to superintendent's recommendations, please.
Madam President, I have before me for your consideration 58 personnel recommendations. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Reverend Walker, seconded by Mr. Miller. Any questions on personnel? All right, roll call, please.
Reverend Walker. Yes. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes, abstain from 56 and 57.
Mr. Lombardi.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes, abstaining from item 52.
And Mrs. Sims.
Yes, abstaining from item 58.
Mr.
It was my turn.
Yeah. Called his name.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Oh,
at
we
this
have
time,
personnel.
I
Oh, yes,
have
all these
Kathy
ones.
McVeigh to introduce some.
We're so sorry they came.
Speaking of hiring high-quality, high-performing staff, we have several wonderful candidates to introduce to you tonight. Thank you all for hanging in there with us tonight for this long meeting, but I think you actually got a really good overview, especially the folks coming from outside Akron, of where we are and the challenges that we're facing. But first up tonight is Amanda Morgan. Amanda is a graduate of Barberton High School. She obtained her bachelor's degree from the University of Akron in 2006 and her master's degree from the University of Akron in 2008, and obtained her principal's license in May of 2011. She did her student teaching at both the primary and secondary level for Coventry schools and began her teaching career with Akron as a special education teacher at Garfield High School in 2008. She continued to teach special ed at Garfield for a total of 4 years. And in 2012, she was selected to be an aspiring principal academy intern at Jennings CLC, and in 2013 was appointed as assistant principal at Jennings. She's being recommended tonight for a middle school principal position, and she'll be our new principal at the National Inventors Hall of Fame, Senator Extemal. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is an honor to join the STEM family, and I'm very excited to work with the amazing staff, students, parents, community partners at STEM to continue their tradition of excellence and innovation and creativity. And I have my husband with me tonight, Jason. I didn't make him move to the front. I let him stay back in the support row.
He wore the purple, though.
He did. Thank you very much.
Next up, I have Yvette Curry. Yvette is a graduate of Central Howard High School. She obtained her bachelor's degree from the University of Akron in 1995 and her master's degree from Akron U in 2000, receiving her principal's license in 2012. She began her career with Akron Public Schools as a 7th and 8th grade tutor in 2004 and continued her teaching at Perkins Middle School as a 6th grade language arts teacher. In 2011-12 school year, she was the language arts teacher at East High School. She was promoted to the position as a behavior coach at Brookville Community Learning Center in 2012 and is now being recommended for a position as an assistant principal for the Apple schools. Congratulations.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to write mine down. I'm not too good at just. But I heard that, or I read somewhere that the most stressful day is on Sundays. Does anyone know why?
Because you're ready to go into Monday.
Because you're getting ready to go to work. And for some people, I think I've heard that it was said that they hate their job. And I'm glad to say, and I am blessed to say, that I do not fall into that category. I love my job. I believe that I found my niche, first being a behavior coach and now as an assistant principal. I want to thank Mr. Black, Miss Rochelle Brownhall, for giving me the opportunity to utilize my skills and talents in this particular position. I look forward to working with the staff, the students, which is a diverse community, and so I just want to say thank you.
Tina McIntyre. Tina earned her bachelor's degree from Kent State University in 1986 and her master's degree from the University of Akron in 2008 and received her principal's license in May of 2010. She did her student teaching at both Betty Jane Annex and Special Ed and in the Stowe City Schools at the elementary level. She was employed by Akron Schools in 1992 as a kindergarten teacher at Leggett Elementary. After a brief absence, Ms. McIntyre was again hired by Akron Schools in August of 2001 as a 5th grade teacher at Cross, and then worked for the next 2 years as a 4th grade teacher at Schumacher. In 2009, she was appointed as a K-2 literacy intervention teacher at Krause, where she continued through 2012. In 2013, she was selected as an aspiring principal intern and was placed at Schumacher, where she continued through 2014. She's being recommended tonight for a Dean of Students position. Congratulations.
I was hoping you weren't going to say the years, but that's okay. That's my age. I just want to thank the superintendent and the Board of Education for this awesome opportunity to serve as Dean of Students, and I'm excited to be a part of the APS leadership team, and I'm looking forward to making that positive influence and to continue to focus on the academic of our students.
Next, I have Anna Cannon, who is, I believe, on vacation and unable to make it tonight. But Anna is a graduate, current Akron School employee who's a graduate of Ellet High School. She earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Akron in 1987 and her master's degree from Mary Grove College in 2009. And in 2011, earned the title of National Board Certified Teacher. She did her student teaching at Barberton City Schools and then taught at St. Paul Catholic School for the next 3 years. In October of 2007, she was hired by us as a 1st grade teacher and was assigned to Resnick. The following year, she became an intermediate elementary teacher at Rankin Elementary. And in 2012, she was selected as a language arts and social studies teacher for the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Ms. Panning is now being recommended tonight for a Dean of Students position in Akron Schools. David Curzon. David Curzon graduated from Tussauds High School in Massillon. He earned his bachelor's degree in elementary education from Central Michigan University in 2005 and is currently working on his master's degree in instructional technology at the University of Akron. He began his teaching career as a full-time Title I teacher for Northwest Local Schools in Canal Fulton and taught all subject areas, mainly focusing on math and reading. The following year, Mr. Curzon began employment as a math teacher with Massillon City Schools and has been teaching for Massillon for the last 7 years. He's also led the 7th grade math team in implementing strategies to reach the struggling student. Mr. Curzon is being recommended tonight for Dean of Students position. Congratulations.
Catherine, or Mrs. Rodacker, has been recruiting me to come join you guys for about the last 4 years. Eventually, or actually the last couple years, I didn't even answer the phone when she called. Because I really didn't believe her, all the good things that she said about Akron City Schools. And I was here today for the first full day of work, and it only took me a couple hours to realize, all the things that she had been telling me over the last couple years. So I just want to really thank you guys for the opportunity to do this. I don't feel like my qualifications are as good as everyone else's you're reading, but I believe that I'll be able to fulfill that position and work hard to get the job done and do what's best for the kids.
Christopher Gruska. Christopher Gruska is a graduate of our own Garfield High School. He earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Akron in 2005 and a master's degree in 2012. Received his principal's license in July of 2013. He did his student teaching in Coventry local schools at both the middle and junior high level. Middle school level. In 2005, he began working as an LD tutor for Coventry schools. Mr. Gruska was hired by Akron Schools in 2009 as a special ed teacher and was assigned to Mickey Bright Elementary. He continued to teach at Mickey Bright until the fall of 2013. At that time, he was appointed as an aspiring principal intern and was assigned to Finley CLC. He's being recommended tonight for a Dean of Students position. Congratulations.
I would just like to thank the board and Superintendent David James for this wonderful opportunity to move forward with my career at the APS. I feel like I've been here forever, considering, kindergarten to now. But it's been a great journey. And as Mr. Bravo stated earlier, sometimes we look at the data and we look at there and it looks negative, but we really do. And I've seen it, especially last year, great teachers, great students, and it doesn't always tell the story. But thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to doing my best to help push forward our district goals. Thank you.
Christopher Haynes. Christopher graduated from Wheeler High School in Marietta, Georgia. He earned his bachelor's degree in elementary ed from the State University of Florida and is currently working towards his educational leadership with principal certification certificate at the University of Akron. Mr. Haynes spent his first year of teaching as a 4th grade instructor for Duval County Public Schools in Jacksonville, Florida. In this position, his classroom functioned as a model classroom for the standards-based instructional model. Mr. Haynes provided intensive, balanced literacy with cross-curricular integration in order to promote high-yielding academic success. Mr. Haynes moved to Georgia and began working for Cobb County Public Schools as an elementary teacher, and then came to Akron and was hired as a teacher at the Edge Academy. In his teaching positions, Mr. Haynes creates an atmosphere in his classroom of high expectations for personal behavior and responsibility. He's being recommended tonight for a Dean of Students position. Congratulations.
Good evening, everyone. Board Superintendent James. I appreciate the opportunity to serve in this district. It's actually been a dream of mine since 2005 when I moved here to work for Akron Public Schools, but to serve the students. So those numbers we saw on the chart, I know they're discouraging, but don't worry, we're going to work together, and I pray that I can continue to serve the district. Thank you.
Matthew Doslick. Matt graduated from St. Ignatius High School in Cleveland and earned his bachelor's degree in education from Baldwin Wallace in 2004. He earned his master's degree from the Ohio University in 2014. Mr. Doslick began his teaching career as a 6th grade math teacher for Wadsworth Schools in July of 2005 and continued to teach in Wadsworth for 4 years. Mr. Doslick began an intramurals program while employed at Wadsworth School District. In 2009, he became a multi-grade math, reading, and social studies teacher for Berea City Schools. While in this position, he was also the athletic director intern and was also a board member for the Committee for Good Schools. He continued working at Berea for schools through 2014, and tonight he's being recommended for a Dean of Student position. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank the board and Superintendent James and the rest of the district leadership. And hopefully we have a mutually beneficial relationship as we continue to grow and inspire excellence in the students and stakeholders with APS.
Next, Madam President, I have before me for your consideration 4 motions and 5 resolutions on the consent agenda. And let the record reflect that items 6 and 7, we need to reverse the pricing there. So the pricing in item 6 should be the price for item 7 and vice versa. You can understand that, correct, Mr. President? All right. Other than that, these recommendations are in proper form and I move their approval.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Reverend Walker, seconded by Mr. Bravo. Any questions or comments?
Mine was only on the 6 and 7. I guess it was the bidding process that the Essex would have been more expensive than the Firestone. Is there more work to be done?
What it is, it's the current parking lots that we're using because of increased construction traffic and because of limited parking we have available. They've become damaged from some of the travel that we put extra travel put on. So to make them last for the next 2 years, we've got to do something. And pretty poor shape right now.
With Essex, is that going to pave just the parking lot, or is it also the back playground area as well?
That's just the parking lot.
It's just the parking lot.
And that, I think that has to do with the band. I was thinking it would cover the area where the band is practicing. I know the Firestone band, and so that's not part of this?
No, it wouldn't cover that. It's just the grind and top coating for the parking lot itself.
Which is that small square right on the curve. Oh, wow.
And including the teacher lot, the one that's next to the building as well. So there still are 2 lots, but it's not the big lot. They're in bad shape. And will that be done before school starts for both?
That's what, that's our aim right now. Weather permitting.
Yeah. All right, any other questions? Anyone give me a roll call, please?
Reverend Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Bravo.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Lamari.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mrs. Sims.
Yes.
And finally, Madam President, I have before me for your consideration 21 business affairs recommendations. These recommendations are in proper form and I move their approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved again by Reverend Walker and seconded by Mr. Bravo. Any question about business affairs? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Reverend Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Bravo.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mrs. Sims.
Yes.
Considering the late hour and all the information that we've already digested, we're going to skip over any president's report tonight. And we don't, let's see, do we have any committee reports?
Do we have to read it?
No.
Any committee reports tonight? Any unfinished business? Mr. James, I know no one, you've already brought up some of the new
Yes.
business. Did you cover up folks? I'm not sure.
No, I did
Okay.
not.
Oh, the public.
Right.
Sorry, I skipped it. Couldn't read it.
I know this has been brought up before for certain community events that we would need a resolution if the board wants to purchase tickets. And this one is the Akron Urban Leagues, our last night on Bourbon Street event Friday, August 22nd. where some employee of the district is supposed to receive a president's award.
It's
We got a plane ticket and everything?
Air Force One.
Air Force One.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? That was Mrs. Simpson, Mr. Miller? Oh, it was Mr. Walker, I'm sorry.
Walker, I'm sorry.
Okay.
See, I even missed it. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sims.
Yes.
President Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Bravo.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Do we have need for executive session? Oh, disaster. So I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Sims, seconded by Mr. Alexander. Who wants to speak first? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sims.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Bravo. Yes. Mr. Lombardi.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Reverend Walker.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.